Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Nestled in a classic New England setting amid 200-year-old elm trees and charming colonial homes, stately sea captains' homes, and charming Cape Cod salt boxes, Shoreway Acres is a graceful blend of Cape Cod's past and present. Shoreway Acres, proud sponsor of Falmouth Community Television.
Green Harbor Waterfront Lodging is nestled in a woodland setting on a picturesque ocean inlet. Green Harbor offers a family waterfront vacation. Enjoy our private boating beach with dock, rowboats, and paddle boats, oversized heated outdoor pool, and kiddie pool. Relax in our waterfront and beachside accommodations. 548-4747 or gogreenharbor.com. People think that a locally owned and operated appliance store may not offer what they need. Actually, we have trained and dedicated sales associates, expert delivery and installation, professional repair service, and personal customer service. Plus, we have access to a huge local warehouse with over 6,000 models in stock. Crane Appliance. We call the Cape and Islands home. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by Meganet Communications. Meganet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
The Quarterdeck Restaurant, located on Main Street in the heart of Falmouth, specializing in fresh local seafood and other classic American cuisine, featuring a full bar with friendly staff. And the Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar, located in North Falmouth just off Nathan Ellis Highway, featuring catering services with 2 full event rooms serving up classic Italian cuisine. The Quarterdeck Restaurant and Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar, we're here to serve all our friends in Falmouth.
If you want to give Good evening. I want to welcome everyone to Our meeting tonight is the Board of Selectmen meeting for May 4th, 2020. And we have a limited agenda this evening to address the discussion of a proposed EDIC recovery loan program. Before we begin, I'm going to just read what I need to read at each meeting, which is just the really the instructions and information regarding remotely conducted meetings. So bear with me for this previously. I'm calling this meeting to order to confirm member access and to make sure everyone's here. What I'll do for the record is I will call out the name of each member and staff present, and if you could just respond in the affirmative. So I'm just going to go by who I see on the screen. So Susan Moran.
Aye. Susan Moran.
Doug Jones.
Doug Jones, aye.
Doug Brown.
Doug Brown, aye.
Sam Patterson.
Patterson, aye.
Great. And for staff, we have Julian Suso.
Suso here.
Peter Johnson Staub.
Peter Johnson Staub here.
Jennifer Mullen.
She's not
Yes.
off screen.
Sorry. Yep. Let me not throw a wrench in the works. So we'll have Jennifer Mullen and Frank Duffy who are going to weigh in later on in our discussion. But I think for the record, we don't have to have them weigh in for their attendance. Okay, so introduction to remote meeting. This open meeting of the Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's order of March 12, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded, and so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. This order does not require public participation, except for certain regulatory matters requiring a public hearing. At the discretion of the chair, a method for public participation may be provided for matters that do not require it under this order. For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by video conference via Zoom app. The meeting is also being broadcast on cable channel 15 and streamed online at www.fctv.org. For those who wish to view the meeting but do not wish to participate, we suggest viewing on FCTV. Members of the public who do wish to make comments or ask questions during the meeting may join the meeting as Zoom attendees, which allows you to submit written comments and questions via the chat function, and also to see and hear the meeting in real time. Please note, there is a time lag between the real-time Zoom online meeting and the FCTV video, whether viewed on cable TV or streamed online. The link and the instructions for joining the meeting are listed in the agenda, which is posted on the town website. For more detailed instructions on how to use the chat function, please go to the town website and enter Zoom instructions in the search box at the top of the page. This meeting is being recorded, and some individuals who've been invited to make a presentation are also participating via video conference. For those of us participating in Zoom as panelists on the video conference, please be aware that you can be seen and heard unless you have muted your microphone or camera. Panelists are asked to please mute their mics except when speaking in an attempt to minimize background noise. Also be advised, when windows on your computer, they could be broadcast and recorded if you hit the screen share button on your computer. Anything captured by the Zoom teleconference will be broadcast and recorded. All supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this board are available on the town website unless otherwise noted. For this meeting, the Selectmen packet can be found by going to the Board of Selectmen page and clicking on Selectmen Meeting Packet, which is a tab on the menu bar on the left. All right, we're going to turn to our first agenda item in a moment. Before we do so, just let me remind everyone of some ground rules just so that we can have an effective and clear meeting. As chair, I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please remember when you're introduced to unmute your microphone and face the microphone of your computer so that you can be recognized and heard clearly. Please remember to mute it when you're not speaking, or if using a mobile phone, mute your phone when not speaking. When a meeting participant wishes to interject a question or comment, please state your name and ask to be recognized. After the presentation and member discussion, the chair will ask a staff member to read any questions or comments that are typed into the Zoom chat by members of the public. Just to be clear, we are very much committed to continuing to have public comment. That's why we're operating using this particular format. For remind folks, we are taking, if people are not comfortable with joining Zoom, we are taking comment in advance of meetings if you send them to us via email as well. And if you'd like them read into the public record, please say so in those emails. All votes for this meeting will be taken via roll call. I will call out the name of each member and ask you to repeat your last name before stating your vote. Okay, we have all of those rules. And this evening I'm in my office, so I don't have the seal for the town of Falmouth or the flag of the United States behind us, but Doug Brown does. So if we could just direct our attention to Doug Brown and his space and join us in a pledge of allegiance.
Hey.
Thank you. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic.
which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Okay, we are going to start this evening by hearing from. Actually, let me go into recognition. Mr. Brown, do you have anything for recognition?
Yes, I think we both agreed that we would recognize the Falmouth Road Race for their innovative approach to the road race this year. They're going to do it online, and it got me thinking that that could be something that could possibly work with fireworks as well. I'm sure a lot of people would be happy to donate something to watch a great video compilation. You know, Atlas Fireworks has tons of shows. They could make a greatest show of all time with their highlight reel. So hopefully other groups will take that up, and including the veteran services. I think that could be very, very well done online. So I'm hoping that they can pull that together. I don't want to throw too much of a challenge out there, but if anybody wants to give it some thought, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and just kudos to the road race. That was a quick turnaround. You know, recognizing that the physical road race wasn't going to happen, and really shifting gears and committing kind of a lot of energy and innovation to having that virtual road race, which I've seen a lot of chatter online, and people seem to be pretty excited about it. So that's a great opportunity for people to kind of think outside the box. So okay, under announcements, let me just ask, are there any announcements from the board?
Well, I can announce that tomorrow we're having a White Ribbon Day video conference chat to spread the word and education about domestic violence issues that are happening in Falmouth. So
Great.
That's something I'll be working on tomorrow evening.
Great, thank you. I know that we have our clerk, Mike Palmer, available via, I think, just audio. And if Michael is able to hear us, we would love to hear from you about the upcoming election.
Can you hear? Can you hear?
Yes.
We can hear you. Yep. We can't hear you now. So while we're waiting for Mr. Palmer to reconnect with us, if Peter could let us know if there's any public comment. I don't think we received anything via email where anyone was asking us to read anything into the record. Someone can correct me if they have.
We have not received any advanced public comment, to my knowledge. It is a good time to just remind folks, if they do want to make a public comment right now, please use the chat function and enter your public comments right now, and we will read them into the record.
Great, thank you. Doug Brown.
May just want to mention that we did receive several emails in support of the EDIC's mission to try to create this fund. So that's sort of a public comment.
Yep, great, thank you. It seems like we are still having some trouble with Mr. Palmer's connection. So what I think we'll do is let's get into the bulk of our conversation. If and when we connect with Mr. Palmer, we will take a brief pause in our conversation and hear from him, if he's able to get to a better spot to communicate with us.
Mr. Johnson Staub was waving.
Oh, yep.
That's fine. I was just, I know that, I think that's a good plan. I was going to try to stand in and comment on some of the election issues that Mike Palmer was going to speak to, but why don't I see if I can get him on the phone offline, and if we can't connect him, I will come back and either myself or Mr. Suso can raise some of the issues he was going to raise.
Perfect. That sounds good. Thank you. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we can get started with the bulk of our conversation tonight, which is going to be a continuance from one of the items on our long agenda last week. And this is about a potential program that the EDIC has put forward for us to take a look at around creating some loan opportunities for small businesses here in our community. So I think what we're going to do for a format is hear from the EDIC. They have, I think, an additional PowerPoint presentation. To view that presentation, we'll then hear from town staff who took the last week, worked very hard to try to go through some of the complications and some of the answer some of the unknown questions that we had last week about this. So we'll hear some input and then kind of have a discussion from the other members of the EDIC as well as this board. And finally, we will hear from, I know there are some participants who are small business owners here in town who would like to speak regarding this issue. So we'll, I think, end on that with that particular piece of the program. Okay. And let's begin. If we can bring in, I think Mike Galasso is going to do the presentation initially for EDIC.
Yes, I am. Madam Chairman, thank you very much. And it's good to see everyone this evening, board members. And thank you for bringing us back so quickly. I know at your last meeting, you had a very jammed agenda, so I went rather quickly as far as the aspects of our proposed recovery loan fund for small businesses in Falmouth. So we have the PowerPoint presentation. I'll walk everyone through it, available to answer questions. There's a beautiful picture of our main street without any cars or any people. And so part of our goal with the lending program is to return our main street and other parts of our community back to a very active spot after the governor lifts all the stay-at-home requirements. Next slide, please. At your last meeting, there was some questions about whether or not the EDIC had participated in lending programs before, and we have 3 of them up here on your screen. We lent money to a nonprofit, Cape Cod Symphony, for improvements to their property and the roadway going up to Highfield. That was done in conjunction with the historic Highfield Hall project, and those funds have been repaid in full for those 2 loans that we made. We also participated in a small business lending program with Coastal Community Capital Bank, and we provided $100,000, and Coastal Community lent that money out to 2 businesses. One was a tree cutting business, the other was a child daycare center. There's an outstanding balance due on those loans of approximately $36,000, which is due next year. Next slide. So here's what we're requesting. The EDIC has an existing intergovernmental agreement that details rents that the EDIC pays to the town for use of the landfill for our solar project. So the reason why we're here tonight is to ask you to consider modifying Section 4 of that agreement to change the amount that we pay to the town to allow us to generate enough income to borrow $2 million that we would then loan out to small businesses in the community. The second request tonight is for you to appoint a member of the Board of Selectmen to sit on the Falmouth Recovery Fund Advisory. So those are our 2 requests. I thought this was an interesting table for us to look at. So what you're looking at is the blue line is the percentage of jobless in that industry for the month of March. So in the accommodations in food service industry, there was 60% jobless claims from people who work in that industry. Just in the month of March, we lost 60% of the employees. The goal line is the amount of PPP dollars. That's the program that the government set up for small businesses that went to that industry. So the accommodations and food service industry had a job loss of 60% in the month of March, and they only received approximately 9.5% of the PPP money. The other categories that you see, healthcare and retail trade, you can see where the blue line, which is the amount of job loss, and the goal line are somewhat equal. Except in construction, you see where there's a lot more money that went to the construction industry compared to the amount of job. So when people say to us, well, there is a program out there to help small businesses, you can see that it's really not reaching one of the major industries we have in Falmouth, accommodations. So it hasn't been fairly applied, and especially in the industry that I think is very important to our community. So here's the project summary that I went through rather quickly at the last time. So the objective is to create a revolving loan fund. That means when money gets paid back, it'd be lent out again, and to provide low interest loans to small businesses in our community. Small businesses usually are businesses that have 3 employees and on up. We're trying to borrow approximately $2 million from one of our lending partners that then would be lent out to small businesses. The security for that fund from our lender's point of view and the repayment source is the current and future income from the EDIC. The typical loans that we're looking to make are $30,000 to $50,000 per applicant. The underwriting and administration would follow very closely to typical small business lending requirements that our lending partners have. And we would come up with additional criteria that would be just applicable to Falmouth, and that criteria would be established by the Funds Advisory Board. Each year there would be an annual independent audit of the fund. We heard a lot about the unfairness of the application process for the PPP program. So we thought the best way to approach it would be applications would be a set date of when applications would be due, and then we'd actually enter a lottery so that each application would get a number from 1 to 100. That number we put in a hat, and if number 5 is drawn out, that's the first application that would be reviewed. If number 20 is drawn out second, that would be the second application to be reviewed, and so on down the line. And after the application deadline and lottery process, if there is still funds available, applications would be open on a rolling basis. We want to have a pre-application assistant process to help people complete their application and put together all the documentation that would be requested. Documentation would be similar to what you would submit for a loan at your local bank. To market the program, we were using social media, newspaper advertisements, press releases, emails, addresses that we have from people like the Chamber of Commerce and so on. So we want to make sure everyone has a great opportunity in order to apply for loans. So it's, as we mentioned, it's a $2 million revolving loan fund. The fund gets replenished with repayment. The initial fund could assist 30 to 40 businesses and support 150 to 200 employees. Over 20 years, since the revolving loan fund, it could assist 120 to 200 Falmouth businesses. And business recovery and growth will help stabilize the town's tax base, meals tax, and rooms tax too. Mike is going to take you through the EDIC budget, where the funds would be coming from in order to support this program, and also talk a little bit about response to some of the correspondence we got from town staff in the last. Michael?
There we go. Thank you. So we thought we should put together a 5-year projected operating budget for the EDIC just to show our sources of income, which are primarily Falmouth station rent, and the lease payments that we're scheduled to get from the 2 solar projects. One has been developed and up and running since 2016. The second project is about to get underway this fall, and we hope to have it up and running right after the first of the year. Our project expenses, and in order to pay the debt service on a $2 million loan pool that we would make arrangements for, we're anticipating, we made some assumptions about what our cost of money will be, 3.5% 20-year amortization, and it looks like the debt service on that would be about $139,000 a year. We have our staff, accounting, and auditing fees. We also built in auditing fees separately for the loan program as part of our expenses. So if we can scroll down on the slide, I think, to show the total there. Well, no, I guess not. So essentially, what our 5-year operating budget shows is if we're able to use all of the lease income we got from the solar developer for both solar projects and use that to arrange for this $2 million of loan pool funds. The EDIC initially is still going to have to dip into its reserves, certainly in 2020 if we get the program up and running over the summer, because the income from the second project doesn't kick in until 2021. The EDIC does have some cash reserves, so we can afford to do that, and that we can run the program. For the first few years, we'll have an operating deficit that we'll be able to cover under cash reserves. We will also continue to look for additional project income for the EDIC. So I think part of the reason why we put this projection together was to really show that, yes, while we're asking the town to provide us a really good deal on the landfill, basically nominal rent payments, it's really so that we can use our solar income revenue to set up this loan program. But we're also going to be using a substantial amount of the resources and cash reserves that the EDIC has. And I don't know what other entity in town here has those resources right now to be able to do this. We think it's a worthy project, and so we certainly, I know our board is certainly willing to go ahead and do this, but we do need some help with some other aspects of the program to get it off the ground. Michael mentioned, since our last presentation, we did get a series of questions from town administration. We provided those responses. The information, as Michael already mentioned, on the prior loan programs, which we participated in and operated with EDIC revenue. So we've done this before, albeit on a smaller scale. Our local council felt that the EDIC and issued an opinion that the EDIC, had the authority under its legislation to undertake this particular program. And again, a variety of other questions that we submitted answers to. We understand, when we just got a copy of just prior to the meeting, that there were some additional questions. We've reviewed them, and I guess what we would say to that is we would look forward to working with town administration on providing those additional answers and, trying to really get creative about getting this program off the ground. That is, if the board wants us to move in that direction for a select night. So I think Michael, that's what I have to cover.
Great, thank you.
Next slide, please. So this just shows what the revenue the town receives from phase 1 and potentially from phase 2. As you know, we're just processing phase 2. We hope to be back in front of the Board of Selectmen with the documents for phase 2, probably later this month, the first part of next month. But the town receives approximately $412,000 a year from Eversource. currently receive $64,000 a year in the tax payments from Citizens Energy. And right now, though you haven't received your first check yet, I think that's due to go out probably later this month, would be the first payment towards the $35,000 a year in phase one, for a total of $511,000. And if you recall, as I mentioned before, the landfill was costing the town $80,000 a year previously to maintain. So that's an additional savings of $80,000 a year, though we didn't calculate it in the $511,000. That's just money that you get every month in a check from Eversource, the tax payment and the rent payment that you would eventually get from us. Phase two, the Eversource payments, because of the change in the program, are less. The pilot payment is about equal because it's only 2 megawatt. And then the projected landfill rent payments would be about $88,000 a year. So it's the $88,000 and the $75,000, I'm sorry, and the $35,000 that we're asking to amend the current intergovernmental agreement that we have with the town and the Board of Selectmen in order to generate enough revenue to pay the debt service and the interest on the $2 million loan. So that's what we need to slide over to EDIC so that we can move forward with this loan program. And we have talked to the Attorney General's office, who's in charge of reviewing projects to see if they need to meet 30B requirements. And we got a response from our attorney that said that we do not need to meet 30B if we follow good business practice, which is to get 3 proposals. We currently have 2 proposals from lenders, and we're working on a third. Also, I think important in phase 2 is the savings to 250 low-income households in our community of about $75,000 a year in reduced payments from Eversource. And you can see what the totals are over a 20-year period. The town would be receiving about $12,830,000 on the landfill project, where before they're paying $80,000 to maintain it. And 250 households would be receiving reduced energy bills for over a 20-year period.
Michael, I just want to add to that, those last 2 benefits you talked about, the $12 million to the town in terms of the revenue from the sale of the net metering credits and the pilot payments from both phases, those would be unaffected by any change in the rent payments from the EDIC to the town.
Does the EDIC get anything in addition to what's listed here?
From this particular project, from the landfill?
Yes.
No.
Go
ahead, Michael.
Yeah, Doug, the EDIC will get reimbursement of its expenses from Citizens Energy when we sign the sublease contract, legal and administration, and that right now that's scheduled to be $80,000.
But there's no annual payment from Citizens or from the Energy directly to the EDIC.
No, the only thing we get is the rent that they pay for the landfill and a sublease agreement to us. That's our only recurring revenue.
So there is recurring revenue from Citizens Energy to EDIC. That's
right
not here.
Yeah.
And how much is that?
No,
that's right.
There's no additional revenue beyond what's shown here. Half of the ground lease payment comes from Citizens to us, and then we keep half of it. The other half goes to the town.
So there is, not listed right here, there is a $35,000 already that goes to the EDIC. It's not listed on this slide. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's listed in our budget, but this slide, we wanted to show the revenue that the town would get. So we focused on the town revenues.
The EDIC, and unfortunately, IC is the town. It's not its own, completely different. And so I guess I'm a little concerned we keep separating the two as being really, really different things. And I get a little worried about that sometimes.
Well, it is a separate entity, a separate 501c3.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the distinction that we make. We have our own board. We have our own funds that we manage. So that's sort of the the difference. But yes, and you do appoint a board member to the EDIC. Okay. I think next, Mike Kasparian wanted to say a few words, and obviously Michael and I are here to answer any questions. That's the completion of our presentation. So
Great.
Michael looks like he's out on the beach.
I know. Well, that's appropriate for his role. So what I think we'll do is we'll hear from Michael Kasparian, and then I'm told that our clerk, Michael Palmer, has been able to connect. So we'll just, that'll kind of wrap up the presentation part. We'll stop this briefly to hear from Michael while we have him online. That's a pretty short presentation from him about the upcoming election. And then we'll be able to go back, hear from staff, and then open up for full conversation. So go ahead, Michael Kasparian, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I want to thank you for your enthusiasm, the entire board. This really is a tremendous opportunity, I think, for the businesses and the people of Falmouth. And as you know, we discussed last week, this really came along, as a call to action from not only business owners, but to a lot of people in the community that had reached out to some folks on the select board, to the Chamber of Commerce, saying, what are we doing? What's the town doing for local businesses? And, Michael DeGiano and Michael Galasso were very quick to react, get in contact. We were in touch with members of the select board and came up with this plan, which was very vigorously pursued. And the need is huge. I'm really very thankful that Michael Galasso included that chart that showed who needed the money and where the money went. We're hearing a lot of feedback about the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Plan. And although it is a phenomenal program and has been working, it is not without, its flaws. And that's easy to understand. The SBA normally lends $50 billion a year. And they were asked by Congress to put $350 billion out within a 2-week period. And of course, they looked at it from a perspective of general business, but a lot of the seasonal business owners are really having a difficult time. The feature in this program is that you would receive money that you could use for payroll. And if you, in fact, did use that money, it would be forgiven. It would become a grant. Unfortunately, the clock is ticking once that money hits your account. And a lot of businesses are not up and running. They're employed. The seasonal businesses don't have their employees. So the clock is ticking on this money that they need to be accounting for right now. And in many cases, we have no idea when we're going to be open for business. And it could be 8 weeks down the road when that money is gone. So not only do these business owners have to pay that money back, but they will have to, come up with other capital to start their businesses. So this program really was designed and aimed to address the needs of those businesses that got left behind, of which there are many. I've also heard this week from several businesses that did receive funds from the PPP that they're actually seriously thinking of returning the money to the SBA. They don't think they can fulfill the guidelines in order for that money to turn in. So I want to underscore a couple of things that Michael Galasso spoke about. The fact being that these loans would be underwritten by our lending partner. These are not going to be loans, last minute, desperate loans made to businesses that are not going to survive. These loans are going to have to go through a vigorous underwriting guideline, be approved by the bank. There'll be a board, an advisory board. It'll consist of a member of the Chamber of Commerce, a board of selectmen, Falmouth EDIC, in order to ensure that these are safe and secure loans. And they'll be guaranteed by the EDIC, just like the Paycheck Protection Plan and the Disaster Recovery Plan are guaranteed by the SBA. Nowhere else on the Cape, or pretty, I would even venture to say the entire Commonwealth, is there a community like Falmouth, where the citizenry, the Board of Selectmen, the EDIC, the Chamber, businesses have come together, and local community banks in such short order to put together such an amazing program. $2 million, and depending on how you look at it, it doesn't seem like a lot of money, but when you're making $30,000 to $50,000 loans to individual businesses, that it could mean their survival, it's a lot. And these are our neighbors. There's 2 degrees of separation here in Falmouth. And I can tell you, of the 600 members that we have at the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, those who are actual businesses, the majority of them are 1 to 3 employees. They're owners that are working the business, and this money can go a long way in getting them through this time when we reopen, and they're going to keep our neighbors employed and keep these businesses going. And it's really about neighbors taking care of neighbors. So we're really excited about it at the Falmouth Chamber. I urge the board to strongly take a look at that. Hopefully we can answer those questions. I know Mike D and Mike G have worked tirelessly on this, and then we can come to some type of a way to get this money into the hands of the people who really need it, our neighbors and our business owners in Falmouth. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Michael. What I wanted to do is, I think it sounds like we lost Clerk Palmer again. I'm going to let Peter Johnson Staub just talk about the piece that Michael Palmer was going to cover, just so that we can, if folks were waiting for that information, they can hear that. Then we'll hear from staff and have a broader discussion about the particular loan program. So Peter, could you just jump in and just share some of that information, please?
Sure thing. Apologies that Mike was not able to join himself. He obviously has the best command of these issues, but he wanted to touch on two things. One relates to early voting. The town clerk is still urging people to consider mailing in an application and going through an early mailing protocol to relieve the crowds at the polls. And that can be done by going to the town's website. And if you search on early vote or early voting, you'll pull up a link to that application very quickly. There are also some other written applications that have been sent by candidates. And the thing that we learned about that and we want to make everyone aware of is that if someone wants to vote in both the state special election and the town election, both of those need to be specified on the application that is submitted. The form on the website has both of them. Some of the other mailers that are available might only be for the state special election. You could actually use that, but just write in send town election ballot also, and the town clerk's office will send you both of those. And then lastly, on early voting, the town clerk would ask that you please leave at least a week to get your ballot to the clerk's office so that there's time to mail the ballot back in time for the May 19th election. So it's really time to get those in right away. And then go ahead.
No, go ahead, Peter. You're probably going there. Go ahead.
On election day itself, the town clerk has been working with the town manager and the health agent, Scott McGann, to put in place as many protections as we possibly can for both the public and the poll workers. What we are asking of people who come to vote is to please wear a mask and to be advised that we're only going to be allowing 6 people in at a time to vote. So there may be a need to wait outside. It won't be, it shouldn't be a long wait. If people are outside, that doesn't mean there are hundreds of people inside. But again, it's just a matter of to protect everyone's safety and to exercise social distance, we're going to be spreading folks out. So we wanted to make people aware of that. And lastly, again, to protect your own safety, we're encouraging voters to bring their own pen. Black or blue is fine, not red, and not a permanent marker or a Sharpie, which bleeds through the ballot. But any other felt or ballpoint pen, black or blue, will work.
Thank you, Peter. And just two other quick add-ons. This clerk's office is really, and this isn't true for every clerk's office in the Commonwealth. They are to the utmost facilitating the ability for folks to vote early. If you do not have a computer and that's just not the way you operate in this world, call them. They will explain to you how easy it is. It doesn't have to be a form, just a note, can be signed. Michael said, you can take a picture of it with your signature and get it to him. There's a box at Town Hall. You can drop that request off if you're, again, somebody who doesn't use a cell phone or a smartphone. There's no reason at all why folks cannot get to request that ballot to get an early ballot. So, this office is really, they're working around the clock to help people to make sure that folks don't choose between their health and voting. There's no need for that choice to be something that people agonize over. And so if anyone has questions about how they're able to vote early, just call the clerk's office if they don't understand the directions tonight, or if it seems overwhelming, to go online. And the clerk and the staff in that department will walk you through it. And the other piece just about masks is a reminder that the governor's mandate goes into effect next week. So it's not just our clerk's request that you wear a mask. It is going to be required by the governor starting on May 6th. So we anticipate that that requirement will be in place just a couple of weeks later on May 19th. So that's really a requirement at the state level to wear a mask, not just when you vote, but obviously in this context to keep our poll workers and everybody else healthy and safe. So if there are any other questions about that, we direct folks to our clerk, who has been just wonderful with his staff on top of that. Anything else, Peter?
No, that's all I had on behalf of the town clerk. Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
When do the early voting applications actually have to be into the hands of the town clerk? Is it election day?
No, I believe it's probably 3 days, 2 or 3 days before election day to be safe.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so turning back to our main discussion for this evening, and I do apologize, as this evening I am using my smartphone, so I don't have everyone on my screen as I would on my laptop. So if anybody is raising their hand and I'm not noticing it, just go ahead and chime in. We'll be a little bit less courteous this evening if I'm ignoring you. So let's start with hearing from Mr. Suso, and then we'll hear from Frank Duffy and Jennifer Mullen, please, on any thoughts, comments, concerns about this program that you have been researching over the week.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll just ask our host to be bringing both Frank and Jennifer onto the screen for their comments as well. Thank you, and Madam Chair, members of the board. As you know, you began discussion of this 1 week ago on your expanded business agenda, and the board had requested that staff members undertake a review and analysis on behalf of the board of this proposed recovery loan program. I do want to thank and acknowledge Frank Duffy for extraordinary assistance, also Finance Director Jennifer Mullen, other staff members as well. On Wednesday evening of this past week, we received a fair amount of information from the EDIC that was supplemented with a larger transmission of information on this past Friday, May 1st. And that analysis was conducted again with, in large part by Jennifer and Frank. Also, we had an outreach to a number of others with whom we work routinely, such as our bond counsel and others. And I know that Frank, for instance, has a number of remarks to make. I will note, and I had earlier advised the board of this, that we continue to have some remaining questions that are yet unanswered regarding this program, and Frank can comment on those further. Jennifer, I know, received some important and helpful input from bond counsel as well. So if agreeable, I'll defer to Town Counsel Frank Duffy and welcome Finance Director Jennifer Mullen commenting also.
Great, thank you, Julian. Go ahead, Frank, if you want to share with us the thoughts that you put together in that document that was sent to us earlier today.
Okay, well, I will. We've been quite busy, as Julian noted, this past week, trying to prepare for tonight, because the presentation last Monday night certainly gave us a lot to think about and to prepare for. So what I've done is I've prepared some remarks, which I will basically read, because I tried to distill them down to as small as I could, but I want to be complete in my remarks. I'd like to thank the EDIC. They've been very helpful and responsive over the course of the past week. Whenever we've asked for information, they've supplied it. And I think that going forward, we can probably expect some additional, support and some cooperation from the EDIC. and it's very much appreciated. Now, I don't have any dispute whatsoever with the necessity for or the commendable purpose of the EDIC's recovery loan program. I think it's a good idea, and I commend them for coming forward with it. But what it did, and starting last Monday night when I was listening to Michael Palasso's presentation, it did raise questions. Following that board meeting last April 27th, the Office of Town Council reviewed the matter to determine a number of issues. We primarily looked at the legal authority of both the town and the EDIC to undertake the recovery loan program. The fact that it is a laudable program does not necessarily answer any of the questions, because we have a program where public funds are being expended, and therefore it is absolutely essential that all legal requirements and procedures be understood, identified, and followed. So in analyzing the recovery loan program, I looked at two issues that I think are the important issues. First legal issue is whether the EDIC has the authority to create and administer the recovery loan program. Second legal issue is whether the Board of Selectmen, acting on behalf of the town, has authority to use town funds currently due the town under the intergovernmental agreement to contribute to funding the recovery loan program. Now, both of these issues are fairly complicated. I'm not going to give you answers tonight. I'm going to raise questions and tell you that we are looking forward to try and resolve these questions. One of the points I'd like to make at the very beginning is that this is a request by the EDIC of the town, and the EDIC and the town are legally independent entities. The EDIC is created by a town meeting vote pursuant to Chapter 121C of the general laws, and the Board of Selectmen does appoint its members, but it has independent legal existence. And the debts of the EDIC, for example, the town's full faith and credit, not pledged for the benefit of the debts of the EDIC. They're separate entities, and they basically operate in their own spheres of, certainly with cooperation from each other, but they are separate legal entities. Now, I consider it to be the responsibility of the EDIC to answer the first question, to determine whether it is on solid grounds in creating and administering the recovery loan program. Now, the EDIC has given us information about what they consider to be a similar program in 2012, where the four loans that were referenced by Michael Galasso and Michael DiGianno were in fact made. I reviewed all the documents that they gave me to look at, and I conclude that the 2012 loan program is not really similar to the one that's being proposed today, and is not a model for the program that's being proposed today. And the big difference, in my view, is that the town was not involved in the 2012 program, and I think the decision to join the town and the EDIC in this program creates a different dynamic that has to be resolved. The EDIC is created by Chapter 121 of the general laws, as I noted, but it possesses only the powers the statute grants it. Now, Section 5 of the Act authorizes the EDIC to receive and accept municipal grants, loans, and advances for economic development projects. An economic development project is defined as the acquisition and improvement of land within a defined economic development area, and an economic development project must be approved by a 2/3 vote of town meeting. To my knowledge, that has not happened. I don't think it has ever happened. So I think that is a detail which has to be accomplished, and I think it's a very important one to make sure that there's a proper framework for the EDIC to take this program.
Frank, could I just jump in and ask this question? Does it make a difference? So if the Board of Selectmen has the power to enter into a lease and negotiate the terms of a lease with an entity, in this case, obviously the EDIC,
right,
does it in any way change what we're talking about if we are, since we're going to phase 2 and we would be renegotiating a lease regardless, because we're entering into a new phase. Would that be a different sort of scenario because we're actually renegotiating terms of a lease and not necessarily taking money that's been given to us and allocating it in a different way? Does
Well,
that change that? Yeah.
No, go ahead. I look at it in two ways. I think that phase one of the solar landfill is basically a done deal. You did enter that. It is documented. It's in the intergovernmental agreement. Phase two has not been done yet, and so I think you have a certain amount of latitude in phase two. I don't think you necessarily have same latitude with respect to phase one, because as I will comment later, I think that taking a stream of revenue that's been dedicated to the town for general purposes, which would go into the general fund and be appropriated by town meeting, and simply diverting it to another cause, may be tantamount to an appropriation that might require town meeting vote. So I just raise that as an issue. But I think you have more latitude with respect to phase two, which hasn't happened yet. But as to phase one, I think we may be forced to resolve that issue differently.
Great, thank you.
Now, as for loaning money, there is a section in the Enabling Act that allows the EDIC to loan money. It's section R, or letter R. But it also continues to say that loans from the EDIC must be secured by mortgage, and does not provide for unauthorized or authority to issue unsecured loans. Now, I'm not sure what kind of loans are going to be made here, but that's an issue that I think has to be resolved. But furthermore, there is a provision in the statute that says loans must be within a defined economic development area. I just pointed out to you, we have not defined an economic development area because we never did define an economic development program. And that is a town meeting vote. So I just pass on to you that Jennifer Mullen passed this information on to bond counsel. Bond counsel did concur that these are questions that must be satisfactorily resolved before the town can agree to participate in the recovery loan program. Now, the second issue, and perhaps the most important one for me, is looking at the authority of the town to enter into this project. As a general rule, the selectmen may commit public funds. The second issue is whether the Board of Selectmen has the authority to commit public funds to the recovery loan program. Under General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5, it authorizes the town to appropriate money for the exercise of its corporate power, with a specific limitation that the town may not appropriate or expend any money for any purpose or any term or under any condition inconsistent with a general or special law. And there is a provision that says that loaning money to private parties for private business purpose is not a recognized public purpose absent explicit legislative authority. So I would just relate to you, there's a recent posting on the Massachusetts Municipal Lawyers Association listserv. This issue that we're talking about here tonight has come up in other communities. Other communities have asked this question. So the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services, weighed in with the information that perhaps a special act of the legislature is necessary to permit a town to provide public funds to private parties for private business purposes. Now, there is a provision in the Massachusetts Constitution, which is a document we hardly ever read, but you have to consult it now and then, which permits public funding of private business interests only in such manner as the general court may determine. And that is another way of saying, according to any special act of the legislature. The EDIC Recovery Loan Program will loan public funds to private parties for private business purposes. To comply with the Massachusetts Constitution, we may need a special act which would authorize the town to do this. And if we're going to go to that extreme, I would also suggest that the special act include specific authority to the EDIC to enter into the recovery loan program. Now, perhaps to address the issue you raised, Megan, my initial review suggests that the reallocation of rent payments to the town under the intergovernmental agreement is essentially an expenditure of public funds. And the expenditure of public funds must be subject to town meeting appropriation. there's a provision in the EDIC's Enabling Act, Chapter 121C, Section 11, that says a municipality may raise and appropriate funds in aid of the EDIC, and the grant, loan, or advance to the EDIC must be an appropriation to comply with that. So I think this is a town meeting function. This is something I think we have to explore, whether we need that vote to resolve these issues. At the present time, I cannot give you an unqualified assurance that we can go forward as proposed. I'm not suggesting we can't. I'm just suggesting these are issues that we have to look at further. We have to have more detail perhaps from the EDIC. It would be even very helpful to have actual loan documents or proposed loan documents to look at. But I think we need to consider the possibility that we need at least 3 town meeting votes here. One, for the EDIC to establish an economic development program. 2, for a special act to enable both the town and the EDIC to enter into the recovery loan program. And a 3rd, to appropriate the money, which is the diversion of money from phase 1 payments on the intergovernmental agreement to the EDIC for these recovery loan programs. So that's the substance of the remarks that I have. I know it sounds complicated, and believe me, I think it kind of is. But nevertheless, I think these are issues that we should look at and see if we can resolve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. What we'll do is if we can hear from Jennifer Mullen now, and then we'll just have some discussion, any questions, any feedback from EDIC, and any questions from the board. So Jennifer, if you want to talk to us a little bit about your research that you've done, please.
Sure, thank you. I actually worked with this with Frank, so I did get the opinion from bond counsel, and Frank discussed with bond counsel, who really concurs with Frank Duffy's comments today. I also had conversations with the auditors regarding this. The same auditors audit EDIC, and some of their concerns, one of our partners suggested that we get a determination, also have the Department of Revenue weigh in. And I know that Frank Duffy has contacted the Department of Revenue, but part of his summation of his comments tonight was from the Department of Revenue. They had given a ruling on another town that was looking to do something similar, and that was special legislation. And so my comments are, more financial, I guess, is, another couple questions. Does the town want to, and especially right now after my presentation last week regarding revenues next year and how we're going to get through next year, and what does 2022 look like and the recovery of the economy. One of the things I think that needs to be answered is, does, the town want to commit future revenues, for this purpose, with the competing revenue stream that we have for basic town functions. I just think that's a question to be asked when you're looking at analyzing this. And I want to reiterate what Frank Duffy said, is that I don't think anybody's in dispute that this is a needed program and that small businesses are suffering right now. We just really want to do our due diligence, that we do this right, and that in the end nothing comes back to actually haunt us, if you will. The auditors, so that was the auditors suggestion, was to get a determination from the Department of Revenue. And then they also, I think in some of the documentation that we received early on, they would not be able to audit this program. They'd have to get another auditor to audit the program. I know part of this was you'd give out the small loans and then the program would be audited after the fact, but our auditors would not be able to do that. I'm trying to think of any other points that we want to make, but I concur, with everything Mr. Duffy said. I've been working on it with him all week. And
can I ask you, Jennifer, do you have a sense of when, I know DOR is inundated right now, but do you have a sense of when we might get an opinion back from DOR? And did our auditors, beyond the issue of getting some information back from DOR and addressing some of the concerns, the legal concerns that Frank brought up, Did our auditors, say anything more than that in terms of, this is a road you don't want to go down, or they're just looking for us to essentially try and answer some of the questions?
Well, I will tell you that our auditor said, just in an email that said, you might want to stay away from this just because of internal control. I mean, I did have a lengthy conversation with, I had an email exchange with one of the partners, and then I had a conversation with another one of our partners. And one thing that had come up was that I had is that EDIC is a component unit on our financial statements. And so my concern was liability, particularly if there's a member of the Board of Selectmen sitting on this advisory committee. What liability does that hook the town into? So that was a concern. And then the actual internal control of how you would allocate money through this fund, and what is the criteria, the payback, who's going to monitor it, making sure, that the payments are made on time. I mean, there's a whole internal control issue that hasn't, been worked out, or we're not even there. So those are the conversations I had with them. But one of the statements from one of them through the emails, just it was a few different lines. Says you might want to stay away from this one, but you can always get an opinion from DOR. But part of Frank's comments was DOR's comment to another community who is trying to do the same thing. And I think another issue too is the unsecured, and Frank mentioned it, is the unsecured loans. In the statute with EDIC, they can loan money, to acquire property, and it's asset based, if you will. And if you think about the town, whenever we borrow money, it's always for an asset. We can't borrow money. And we ran into this with the wind turbines. We can't borrow money to give money to somebody else. Like, we can't borrow money and then give it to the state. We have to have an asset for that. And I kind of look at that blanket with EDIC, and I think that's what some of the issue may be. Although they are a separate entity, and they do have a little bit more latitude, if you will, with borrowing money, but it has to be backed by mortgages. So I think a lot of that, as Frank mentioned, that has to be worked out as well. So there's a lot of lingering questions to look at documents. What's the internal control, especially with the liability of the town, since we're being brought into this because we're actually essentially being asked to fund a portion of.
Megan,
Yes, go ahead, Frank. Is that Frank?
I just so you'll know, and for everybody to know, I did reach out to Mass Department of Revenue. I have called them. I've left voicemails. I sent them an email explaining who I was and what I needed, and would somebody call me. I haven't heard, but I will continue to pursue that.
Okay, thank you. And I'm wondering if we could, one sort of distinction I would love to maybe suss out a bit and get some feedback on is if, and Jennifer speaks to a little bit of and as Frank as well, to the concerns that you're raising. My understanding is that the banks would be, I mean, this is not like we're giving EDIC a lump sum of money and they're then lending that money out. Essentially, the money we're giving is for the debt service for the funds that they're going through the bank with. And could the folks from EDIC speak a little bit about how you see the process for, a business comes to you, who's working with them? Is the bank going to be working with them? Is it just going to be EDIC? Can you talk a little bit about that, Michael?
Sure. It's really proposed as a partnership between our lending partner and the EDIC. And the applications would probably come to us. We would review them, pass them on to our lending partner for underwriting. But we may just look at it and know the business, know the people, and pass it on to the bank to do their full underwriting like they would do any loan. And then they would decide to, collectively would decide, yeah, this is something we want to go ahead and lend the money to because they have good purpose behind it, and they've got a good track record and got a good credit score. So we would have a whole underwriting criteria. I think Sue Moran had asked previously at our meeting, what's the eligibility requirements. We were hoping that working with the advisory committee that collectively we would come up with those. eligibility requirements along with the application. So we're not quite there yet. I have passed on a sort of sample application to one of your board members who had asked for it at the last meeting. I think Sam did. So we passed on a sample application and some of the underwriting criteria that the SBA uses. So we'll be modeling it somewhat similar to that. So, and remember that, you know, we are looking for the cash flow from the landfill in order to support the initial $2 million that we want to borrow and then relend out. You know, our hope is that our borrowers would be paying back their principal and their interest on those loans too, which would come back and reduce our sort of exposure and stuff. We do want to continue to have the $2 million line out there for an extended period of time. That's what we're anticipating would. As far as while you have me, as far as the other comments from Mr. Duffy and everyone else, you know, we're here, Michael, myself, the three Mike are here to do whatever we can to work together with Frank and Jennifer and work through these issues so we can get hopefully a positive resolution so we can go ahead and put this program together and get the money out to the small business. So we hear the concerns. We just got the memo from Frank. We had one earlier in the week, and then we received one about 5:30 this afternoon. And collectively, we'll work with Mr. Duffy and try to resolve that, talk to the folks that we need to. And excuse me, I've already advised some of our, you know, Dave Vieira and Dylan too, that if we need some help up in Beacon Hill, then that's where we'll have to go. I think people would be very interested in trying to make something like this work. And it could be a model, not that everything we do needs to be a model, but it could be a model for other communities, and maybe they see the merit in it, and maybe we can get something done quickly if needed.
Great. I know that Doug Brown wants to make a comment. Doug, if you want to.
Yes, please. So I get a sense that the board wants to support this. I'd like to know if we could hear from the EDIC whether the phase 2 modifying the lease agreement on phase 2 would be enough, or were you counting on that phase 1? Have you done the numbers on that?
Michael, you want to take that, or?
No, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, well, I mean, the budget projections, Doug, that I showed for our operation assumed if we were able to retain all of the rent that we get paid from the developer, we're still running deficits of about $35,000 a year. If we didn't have the $35,000 from phase 1, that would mean that our deficits would be more like 70. So it's really cutting it close. We'd have to take a close look at it. So another way to, I think, I think what you're asking is if we could separate the phase 2, which hasn't started, and maybe we need a whole separate intergovernmental agreement for phase 2. And there could be other reasons why we may need a new IGA for phase 2 because of some of the time limits that we might have if you extend the 20-year life of the phase 2 project out. We would be coming at the very end of our current IGA. So there is an argument for maybe even creating a new IGA to allow for a longer time period in case there's delay in getting the project online. So if we go to a new IGA, then it may be that the argument can be made that it's an entirely new agreement, and terms can be negotiated from scratch, so to speak. So potentially, if the phase 2 revenue, the phase 2 rent that the EDIC pays is just that nominal amount, and we're able to again retain all of our rent that we get from the developer for phase 2, we'd have to take a look at our budget to see if we could run the program just on the phase 2 rent that we get from the developer. So it would make it a lot tighter for us, but we'd have to take a look at it.
Yeah, if I may just have Doug, also the amount that we could borrow, if we find that the path is quicker, as you suggested, Doug, then the amount of the program might be reduced a little bit. But I think being able to get some money out to these folks is important too, and timing would be important. So we'd have to look at that. If the path to changing the existing agreement on phase one becomes very long, and we can do it just with the money, ground lease payments coming in from citizens for phase two, I think we'd take a hard look at that and see if we can negotiate some better terms with our lenders to get back up to that $2 million.
Great, thank you. Sam or Doug Jones?
I was just going to say that the $2 million, again, a lot of this is just numbers we're throwing out there. If you change it to 1.5, then you can do it with the phase two, make it all work, and we can move forward probably more expeditiously than if we're throwing the complications of phase one into it.
Yeah. Frank Duffy, could you just speak to that point again? Could you just tell us a little bit about the town meeting component, the way that you see it, if the scenario is as both Doug are speaking about it?
Well, I had two sections of comments. One is the responsibility of the EDIC, which kind of is unchanged. But the second part is the component of the town. If you take phase one out of it and try not to amend the intergovernmental agreement and just let the Board of Selectmen negotiate phase two, it may simplify matters.
Okay. And could you just, I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor the point, but if we were to go, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
If we were to go that route, could you just speak again? I mean, we generally, can you talk about when the board negotiates a lease of this type? I know we don't have many like this, it's not common, but do we generally go to town meeting for those terms of the lease? It's essentially usually we go to permission to negotiate, correct? And then
you, if I recall, and you put me on the spot without my reference, but I think that the intergovernmental agreement is the function of the Board of Selectmen. Julian, do you remember that?
That's how, I mean, not that I've been doing this a long time.
Well. Yeah. That's my memory as well, Frank. Of the Board of Selectmen too. It used to be that intergovernmental agreements all had to be approved by town meeting, but then the Municipal Modernization Act, I think of 2016, switched it. So now the Board of Selectmen controls intergovernmental agreement.
We had to be authorized by the town meeting to enter into the lease, but it was up to us to determine what the.
Well, there's a couple of things involved. I think you already have on record the vote of the town to authorize the lease of the land. So now you're only talking about the condition. That's what the intergovernmental is.
Okay, great. Anybody else from the board with questions? Yes, Doug Brown.
So if we could, who would start revising this intergovernmental agreement that we might consider at a future meeting?
We don't have it yet. It would actually be, I think what we're all talking about, the question that I asked at the beginning and you and Doug have both touched upon, is it wouldn't be a revision because that would be going back to that 35,000 of the first phase. It would be a drafting of the second phase, which we wouldn't have to revise it in the sense that this board has not voted on it yet.
No, what I'm asking is who would do the work? Who would create that? Can we get a draft of that started?
I think EDIC, correct me, would be the first drafters of that and send it to us for review. Is that how it generally works?
Yes, that's how it works. We have the present intergovernmental agreement contemplates two phases for the landfill, and it acknowledges that only one has been approved. And it does acknowledge that there will be a subsequent amendment coming down when phase two is ready to go. So in a sense, we'd be starting on phase two with a clean piece of paper.
Okay. Sue.
And just, I'm in agreement with trying to be practical in order to expedite these funds. We're dealing with it's certainly an economic emergency along with the health emergency right now. One of the things I think that makes sense is when you're talking about the Falmouth EDIC that was created, and coupled with the fact that all businesses are going to be considered in Falmouth, I don't think there's going to be a need for a lot of kind of legal machinations with respect to the scope. That it is the Falmouth EDIC. The Falmouth EDIC works for economic development in Falmouth. That's it's sort of a reciprocity, and I think the lawyers can expedite that aspect as well. But I like the idea of really trying to do something in a time frame that doesn't have to wait for a town meeting votes, because I think there may be too many bankruptcies at that point. I think right now the whole point of the uniqueness, Falmouth is one of the only communities that has an EDIC. There's one down Cape that's done a lot of good work as well, but we're in the unique position as as Meg Kasparian said, in working together to really have our businesses, our Main Street, our the entirety of Falmouth on a springboard for economic development, to really increase the tax base for the town, to really be sure that Falmouth is in the best position possible to survive this pandemic.
Yeah, and just if I may, I would say a couple of quick things. One, to Jennifer Mullins' very good point, which is, looking at taking funds that we would potentially be getting and moving them in a different direction, or not collecting them if that were the term of a new agreement. And I think that always bears, obviously, close watch and review. But when I think about how that relatively small amount of money would potentially be offset by businesses doing well and contributing to the town coffers with meals tax, rooms tax, etc. I think that to me, those potential numbers are far greater than it's a fairly, every penny we want to be responsible with, and this town has done. Jennifer, Julian, town staff have done an excellent job. That's why we are, knock on wood, in a different position than in many other communities as we sit here today. A lot of communities are facing really kind of keeping some services in place, and we are talking here about something that goes beyond even basic services. So I do see that the potential good is outweighed by the potential loss of a relatively small revenue to the town. The other thing is that I think we have a recipe for really good turnout for this program, in the sense that folks that can apply for the federal program, because it can potentially be a grant. Everybody loves a grant more than a loan. So if they believe they can fulfill the terms of that's required of the grant, that's where they're going to go. That's going to be their first choice, and they're going to try to make use of it. This is really for a different demographic. This is for folks who cannot make use of those funds for whatever reasons. We don't need to belabor them. We've talked about the particularity of our community, the way we staff, the timing of staffing, employees, etc. So this is really, to me, I don't see it as it's not duplicating what's already available at the federal level. It's, really targeting a specific group of individuals in town that fit a niche. They're stable, they're likely to be able to go forward if they have this injection of some capital. And at the same time, they didn't fit the criteria or were worried about fitting the criteria for the federal funds. So, I would love to see us, I know we're not going to have a final decision tonight. I think Frank and Jennifer have really done due diligence and, really looked at some novel questions, because this is somewhat novel. And we need to look through that. But I like the idea of looking at the second phase only, because I think, if we're looking for a vote from town meeting, we don't know when that's going to happen. If we're not having town meeting to the fall or late summer, that's probably too late for a lot of businesses. So I really think that's a great avenue to pursue a bit further.
Megan, I have a question. Sam?
Yes, Sam, go ahead, please.
This is a slightly different slant, but I guess, the EDIC developed the technology park, and there was a lot of property that turned over. I was just wondering if there's any of that property that's left that could be used to collateralize a loan that could then be lent out to small businesses. Do you have any assets other than, income from a rent that's going to be coming that could be used for a small business loan?
We do, Sam. They're not great pieces of property, but as you brought that up, I just thought of something. The town owns a water tank, a tall water tank on property that EDIC owned. So maybe the town would like to buy that from us, and we can use that money put towards the program too.
No.
I think we have enough water tank.
Okay. But yeah, we do have a few properties. They're not great. Some of them are landlocked. But we have offered that as additional collateral to our lenders, and maybe we can take a closer look at that, and that's a great investment.
Yeah, I think Sam raises a great point. Maybe somewhat of a hybrid. Looking at the variety of assets as you would normally to secure those. Maybe it can help to address some of the concerns that Jennifer and our auditors, rightfully are raising about securing those loans. So,
And
any
if I
other?
could, just one more comment on that. We do
Yep.
we do have a very long-term ground lease where the station is, that also includes 2 acres of vacant land that we might be able to use as collateral too, though it is a long-term ground lease with the Department of Transportation, but it has like 97 more years to go on it. So we would definitely look at some of those things too. We have had plenty discussions with our lenders about those assets.
Thank you, Mike. Doug Brown, I saw you raise your hand.
Do we need any kind of a motion today from this board to request that the EDIC begin to develop a new intergovernmental agreement?
My guess is, I'm sorry, I don't know if anybody's raising their hand. I'm trying to just scroll through my screen here, but I think that we need, sorry, just seeing if anybody else has a comment. Yes, Doug Jones, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sure they're already doing that. I don't think they need a vote from us. They're the ones negotiating the solar system. They know they need to have the IGA, so I'm sure they're already figuring that out.
Yeah, that was my comment as well. I think it's really in the hands of the EDIC to provide us with a proposal that they think we can actually negotiate.
Susan?
It was the same comment.
Anything like about sort of where we would go from here in terms of the conversation we had tonight about looking at that phase 2 as a potential mechanism for moving forward? Doug Jones, and then I'll scroll through and see.
Only 2 questions I still have is to the advisory board, as to Jennifer's point, as to whether a member of the board should really be on it or not because of the liability there. And also the sunset clause for this. What happens if at some point the EDIC, if we vote not to have it anymore? And what happens to the funds at that point?
I think those are great questions. And, one thing I thought about was, let's just think of the scenario, and I don't think this happens, but, what would be in the agreement in terms of, if EDIC is ultimately, so we decide we're going to sort of release that payment and somehow the backing for EDIC falls through. So, just kind of bearing in mind that, as the draft agreement comes through, that there's that contingency component if for some reason the program can't come to fruition, just recognizing that, that situation. And again, addressing Doug Jones's point of sort of when does it sunset? What do those terms look like? And I think that's for EDIC and their council to address in a draft agreement to us. Michael, sorry, I'm going back to see. Anything from EDIC? Any questions or other comment?
I think Michael Giuliano has one. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. There's been some comment about who really should draft the amendment or the new IGA. And as Frank pointed out, the last time we did this, we developed the documents and they were reviewed by Frank's office. So we would do the same. And the other thing I wanted to point out was the whole phase 2 project is really time sensitive, and we've been in discussion with Citizens Energy. They're aware of what we're trying to do. There are 2 other documents in addition to the IGA that go along with that. One is the power purchase agreement for phase 2, which is basically an agreement that, as Frank knows, the town executes directly with citizens on phase 2. And then the other thing is our sublease agreement with citizens on phase 2, which the town also they're not a signatory to that agreement, but they do review it because it is referenced in the IGA. So I'm pointing that out only because I know there's a concern on the part of citizens that we have to move these documents forward. It's very important for them to get their construction financing in place to be able to start construction on the new solar field phase 2 in the fall. So I just wanted to point out that we will be working with town council's office to review those other 2 documents and get those squared away. And they are independent of the new IGA that we may do or an amended IGA, but we do need to move those along independent of the IGA, and that depending on what action the board takes tonight in a vote, but I do think it would be helpful for us, because we are spending money on council, to know that there was a desire to if we do a new phase 2 IGA, that the rent would be nominal, so we could go ahead with this program, I guess. So I'm not quite sure what the action the board is going to take, but if somehow that was recognized in that action, I think that would be very helpful for us.
Thank you. Is anybody raising their hand? Yes, Doug Brown.
That's where I was headed with the motion. If we needed any kind of motion, I would make a motion that we request the EDIC to develop this new intergovernmental agreement with the minimal payment schedule to facilitate their plans for this program.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Doug Jones.
I would second that, but I guess I would like to have that the agreement for the nominal rent be during the duration of this loan. And if the loan stops happening, we reconsider what the rent is. But I don't want, I'm a little bit worried because this is money that the EDIC was seeking before this whole loan thing came in. And so it feels a little bit like, oh, this is just another way of a money grab. And I want to make sure that we understand that the nominal rent is somehow tied to the loan program, not just a way the EDIC actually gets the money they've been after.
Okay.
To be a little blunt.
That's fine. We like blunt at this time of night. Okay, so I have a motion. I have a clarification of that motion, and Doug Jones seconded it. Is that clarification okay with you, Doug Brown?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. English Braga, aye. Patterson?
Patterson, aye.
Doug Brown?
Brown, aye.
Jones?
Jones, aye.
And Moran?
Moran, aye.
Okay, so just to be clear, for EDIC, we're looking for that. The direction we've given is for EDIC to go ahead and draft and then submit to this board a new IGA, whether it's an amendment or a whole new agreement, where we are addressing the issues that you just heard tonight, with particular concern from Doug Jones and I think other members of the board, recognizing the direct connection of the rent, the sort of waiving of those rental fees with the lending program. Do you need anything else? Are there any further questions from, yes, Mike?
So, and I guess alongside of that, and I don't know if this is again a separate action that the board would like to take, but are we also directed to continue to work with town council and the town administration to look at some of the other issues? Because I do think there are maybe some other issues. We may have simplified the package a little bit if we.
Yeah. We didn't solve the other legal questions and financial questions, both raised by Frank and Jennifer. We haven't solved them. I think we may have simplified a road forward, but there are still challenges that we don't have answers, to some of those questions as we sit here tonight. So absolutely, I think, the drafting of that agreement is going to be done in tandem with sussing out some of the answers to these questions with town council and town staff. Great. Any other, we have some business owners who have been waiting. I know they wanted to weigh in, so I just want to make sure we don't have any other comments from other folks. We could have invite any of the business owners into the conversation.
We are bringing them on shortly.
Great, thank you.
There's also a note, it says from Michael Pavin to all panelists. Is that Michael Palmer?
It was because it said it had to do with the early voting applications.
Right, so it looks like just now Michael Palmer's adding information, and I just wonder if while we're waiting, we want to announce that.
Yeah, I don't see what his add-in is, but I do see, what we'll do is we'll just see if maybe Peter or Greg can contact him to see if there's anything we've missed. And why don't we hear
I
from,
can tell you what it is. I can see it on the chat.
yeah, but we'll just have Peter, if you can just sort that out while we hear from I see Deb McGuire and I see Sean Daly. Welcome. Why don't we start, Deb? You were the first person I saw, Deb. So if you want to just share some of your thoughts.
I want to thank the board for considering this issue. I'm really pleased that the thoroughness and the thoughtfulness that's going into this. I am one of those businesses that is just flabbergasted what has happened. Governor Baker announced the other day that he said for the month of April, Massachusetts is going to lose $1.3 billion in restaurant revenue. So if you multiply that times the sales tax, that's $81 million. It's going to happen again in May, because I don't think we're going to be opened or just partially open. And while I think this is a tough time for business, I think the municipalities, towns, and governments are going to feel the effect of loss of revenues next year in the next fiscal budget. So I'm so thrilled that you are so well looking at this, and I hope you'll continue with it. And I hope somehow or another it can be expedited, because time is of the essence. And thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we're all looking forward to getting some, time back in at the pub when that's.
Thank you.
Takeout is lovely, but it's not the same thing as sitting at a restaurant. So it's missed. Mr. Daly, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I just want to thank the select board sending this proposal as well, and also from the EDIC. I want to thank EDIC and Michael Lasso for introducing this local stimulus plan for our business owners like Deb, Wire, and all our small other businesses in town. As past 19 years, I've owned Eat Your Heart Out Catering Company. I'm based on a big wedding business, lots of people in groupings. So this year it's going to be very tough for us to, we've already had a number of our clients already canceled on us, and trying to reschedule, in the near future. We just recently opened up our gourmet market and cafe at 587 Main Street. So although we've been established for 19 years of the catering, we do have a brand new business on Main Street. So we're dealing with that between this COVID and the Main Street construction, other inline factors. I just think that this proposal is crucial to myself and other small business owners in town. This will provide us with seasonal upstart cost, opening prep, inventory, working capital. I think we're going to have a decent summer this year, hopefully, if things are lifted by Governor Baker by mid-May. But I'm looking towards the future of, getting through the winters of 2021 and getting into another big season. I think that the need for this loan is, once like I said, crucial. Myself and locals. I would maybe propose one thing, along with all that's been going on. This road construction, I'm sure Deb and all our other Main Street owners put a damper on. So maybe something to get our Main Street fixed before sort of the influx of, people coming into our town from out of state, staying here in their summer homes, and supporting, our local small business owners. But I just, once again, I want to thank you, the board and the EDIC, considering this. As a small business owner, it's crucial. I believe we're all the backbone of this town, and supporting, whether it's retail or restaurants or, lodging or whatever. Just appreciate it very much. And
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I know I've seen just really one of those things that's so special about our town, but folks who have been, through your business in particular, I know it's happened in other places too, but donating meals to first responders and to healthcare workers, and, seeing the meals that you're putting together from your place, so that there's just, just such a special treat. There's nothing that shows that you care like food, at least for me, and I think it's true for most people. So I know that those are just so welcome. That generosity and collaboration is just one of those things that makes this town special. So thank you for all that you guys are doing while this is certainly a challenge. So we appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate it as well. We've got an out number of donations that, have come in to us, and we're just trying to get the mouths fed through this pandemic, and hopefully it'll surpass soon, and we'll all get onto our normal life.
Great. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Hi, Scott Gelfie. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Hi, Megan. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Sorry, you guys, a little bit longer than anticipated, but waiting to hear from your thoughts as well about this.
Yeah, let me first, as my role with the road race, I first want to thank you guys for the shout out. Our staff did a tremendous job preparing contingency plans, so they were ready to go when our event was canceled in August. Thanks for the shout out. I also want to thank all of the Michaels, Michael Galasso and DiGiano, for bringing this forward with the EDIC, and of course Michael Kasparian, who always has our back. So, but as my role as a small business owner, I mean, I know when Michael Galasso first called me about this, I thought of the restaurants, and our Main Street has really been thriving over the last few years because of, I think, all of the great restaurants we have. It brings so many people out, and I don't, I've been able to make a go of it somehow. I'm working. This is day 55 straight for me, and I did get the PPP. I'm able to bring some people back now, and I'm making a go of it with takeout, drive ups, and shipping and whatnot. But some of the restaurants that aren't able to open, and when Governor Baker does open things up, it sounds like they're going to be at a certain percentage of capacity. And, I really see businesses like that really, really needing. And she's got all her summer stock, and she's making a go of it with some video sales and whatnot, but that summer stock is stuck there, and
we're losing you a little bit, Scott. Your video froze and your audio's freezing a little bit. But I think we absolutely get the sort of the thrust of your message, which is, people before this were gearing up, some of these places gearing right up for for the retail businesses gearing up for spring, and they've got stock there that hasn't really been able to, turn over. And, same for, I think you make a great point, how vibrant. Anyone who's lived here long enough knows what, Main Street used to look like, and it's just been utterly transformed. And it is something that we're, I think, so proud of. And so that is, certainly something that we hope to continue to support. So I just want to thank Sean, Deb, Scott for number one, still smiling amidst what has been a really devastating time period, and for coming on and sharing your thoughts as business owners in our community. We really appreciate it, and certainly we're going to continue to have updates on where this program is heading. So thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you. We appreciate you.
Megan,
Yes, go ahead.
I think we should, make sure we emphasize to people at home that there are all the employees that these employers are hiring that aren't going to get paid. I mean, there's a lot of hurting going on in this town. It's not just the owners, but all of the people that they support through their employment. And I don't want us to just brush over that, because the pain is felt very deeply into the town.
Yeah, absolutely. And the uncertainty, the fact that we don't know, it's easy to sort of endure when there's a definite end. We don't know what the end looks like. And, as business owners try to go forward and plan and rehire, or hire their summer staff or rehire their previous staff, it's really hard not to be able to say, hang in there for a couple more weeks. We're going to open up. We just don't know what that's going to look like. So definitely, I mean, a lot of, just a lot of uncertainty and pain going around right now. So hopefully, we can perhaps partner with a program that can assist with some of that. So good point. Thank you, Sam. Yes, Doug?
One thing, and maybe on a future agenda, I'd like us to consider is what can we do for some of these restaurants who may be limited by the space they have inside, and whether we can change some of the restrictions or give them some variances that they could do some more tables outside than they're licensed for right now, even if it's in their parking lots. I've even heard the idea that we close Main Street so that there are no cars coming there and some tables can be put out in the street. But I think for us to be creative about how we may be able to get these restaurants being able to operate more than 25% capacity, but by using the outside space that we do have, I'm trying to give them some more flexibility, I think would be useful.
Yes, Doug.
Yeah, great point. And I think, one of the things is, and I know I've talked about this with Michael, with some of the folks from Main Street, saying, let's kind of start to brainstorm along with the health department about some of these, and, building department, et cetera, about some of these potential options, so that when we hear from the governor, we have, some plans. When the governor comes down and says whatever he's going to say on the, leading up to the 18th of May, we have some possible options. So Doug, I think you raise a great point, that will, I know some of those conversations have already started, but not formally with this board. So we can definitely have that on our upcoming agenda, bring in the departments that would weigh in on that, to talk maybe more specifics. Great, thank you. Doug Brown, did you have a comment that I missed?
No, but I was just going to agree with Scott Gelfi, whose connection was fading when he was making the point. It's the restaurants I think of first when I think of who's really suffering right now. I think construction is kind of holding its own, but there's no way to repay all that they've lost already. I think that I wish that this restaurant on Main Street could be the focus of this program to begin with.
I would just add to that, though, and not to take, I know we have 3 shops who serve food here, but 3 owners of shops, but they can to some extent still be open because they serve food, obviously with drastically reduced options. But these retail stores, the florists and the shops on Main Street have had their doors shuttered with absolutely no business at all. So I think they are really hurting as well, because they just—
That's a very good point.
They haven't had an opportunity to do anything. So I think, we're going to have, it's obviously going to take a number of approaches. Every business is a little unique. So I agree that we're going to have to really be creative, and it may be that this summer looks unlike any other summer, in many different ways that we've had in Falmouth for a long time, when we talk about the way that Main Street might look, et cetera. So I just want to thank everybody. If I've missed a comment, someone just shout in.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
No, Sam, I just want to be careful about how we just sort of brush over all of the people that depend, they're trying to operate in this town. I think it's a pretty complex problem when we ask ourselves, how should we prioritize who would receive the benefit of these loans? I don't want to be too cavalier about it. because there are an awful lot of people that are, cleaning houses, doing the kinds of things that would be done in the various lodging that aren't working for themselves basically, and they have no other source of income. So I just want to be careful about how we prioritize who actually is eligible for these potential loans.
And I think that's obviously something that we would be looking for initially from EDIC that then we would weigh in on. I think that would be part of the initial presentation. I know they've talked a little bit about it, but that I think would be something that we would talk more specifically about. So it's a good point. There's a variety from pretty much every every industry has been just hit with this. So thank you, Sam. Good point. Anything else?
Megan, I just would like to thank the board and the staff and everyone's time they've put into this so far. And we'll get to work tomorrow morning answering a lot of the questions. I've taken a lot of notes from tonight, but I just want to thank everyone.
Great. Thank you. We appreciate all the work that EDIC and staff did in just the last 7 days since we last met to talk about this initially, to really kind of drill down on some kind of more nuts and bolts of how it might work. So thank you to everyone. And unless anybody else has a comment, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Patterson.
Okay, all those by roll call. English Braga, aye. Patterson?
Patterson, aye.
Jones?
Jones, aye.
Brown?
Brown, aye.
And Moran. Okay, thank you, everybody. Stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.